right, so we're on page 201 of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, translated by Swami Nikhilananda. And we were talking last week about a path meant for worldly-minded people. And, I get people worldly-minded. I mean, it's not an accusation. That's just folks who are kind of still caught in the world as real, which would probably technically be all of us. But tonight he's going to go beyond that. He starts off saying, fully awakened souls are beyond virtue and vice. They realize that it is God who does everything. So that's a very high state of being and a very interesting idea. It's very tempting to take that idea and use it when we're too young to do so. For us to blame everything that we do on God, it's a little premature. It's sort of like a kindergartner. Never mind. I guess that'll be inappropriate too. but it's a state that we can't really claim or take refuge in until we know it to be true, and then we wouldn't, because God is the only doer at that state. But this state comes when the mind has been quieted, and when the ego has been diminished, and when that divine voice can be heard in the silence, and everything happens spontaneously for a realized soul. Because for a realized soul, there's no past or future. There's only the now. And the presence of God moves them through inspiration. They know the right thing to do in every moment. With every moment comes all of the information or knowledge necessary, the wisdom necessary to navigate it perfectly. So these fully awakened souls kind of live in that absolute surrender of their own will, which was based on wrong ideas about themselves. And so they've given up that independent will and now follow the pure will, the will of the divine, which you can't really call it a will, because it doesn't exist in time. It's spontaneous. And so the divine will happens as before God has a will. It's already happening. He goes on to tell the story. He says, there was a monastery in a certain place. The monks residing there went out daily to beg their food. One day a monk, while out for his alms, saw a landlord beating a man mercilessly. The compassionate monk stepped in and asked the landlord to stop. But the landlord was filled with anger and turned his wrath against the innocent monk. He beat the monk until he fell unconscious on the ground. Someone reported the matter to the monastery. The monks ran to the spot and found their brother lying there. 4 or 5 of them carried him back and laid him on a bed. He was still unconscious. The other monks sat around him, sad at heart. Some were fanning him. Finally, someone suggested that he should be given a little milk to drink. When it was poured into his mouth, he regained consciousness. He opened his eyes and looked around. One of the monks said, "Let us see whether he is fully conscious and can recognize us." Shouting into his ear, he said, "Revered sir, who is giving you milk?" "Brother," replied the holy man in a low voice, "he who beat me is now giving me milk." But one does not attain such state of mind without the realization of God. So you see, this young monk was a realized soul and saw that it was God that did everything. And so when one of the monks was giving him milk, he saw that as God feeding him milk. And it was also God who was the landlord who beat him. And so it's an amazing state of being to experience that when you're in a constant state of refuge, a constant state of bliss. I mean, you're sharing the mind of God at that point. And you see that oneness everywhere. There is no blame. All of the big questions are answered. All of the questions on this one truth kind of makes everything make sense that doesn't make sense when you're viewing the world at our level. The injustices that happen, the wars and the fears and the abuses. When you come to realize that it's God playing with God, that there is no other, then all of the gross injustices or seeming injustices vanish. And again, our dream state is a wonderful way to explain that. In the dream, all kinds of things can happen in a night, but in the morning, the cops are not going to knock on your door. Why? Because everyone in your dream was you. Everyone in your dream was activated by your own mind. And so there was nothing done, no harm done, no rules broken, no laws violated. Just you playing in the mind while you sleep. And so in essence, that's the nature of the universe. It's the same. No one's actually being hurt. Nothing is actually being done. Nothing is actually being accomplished. That we are all God playing, God sporting within his own mind, as it were. But one does not attain such a state of mind without the realization of God. Manilal, sir, what you have just said applies to a man of a very lofty spiritual state. I talked on such topics in a general way with Bhaskarananda. Master, does he live in a house? Manilal, yes, sir, he lives with a devotee. Master, how old is he now? Manilal, 55. Master, did you talk about anything else? Manilal, I asked him how to cultivate bhakti. He said, chant the name of God, repeat the name of Rama. Master, that is very good. Yeah, so there's an answer. I know at least one of you out there, or I won't name names, has asked, how do we increase our devotion? How do we attain to bhakti? And there it is, right there. It says, how to cultivate bhakti, chant the name of the Lord and repeat his name. Rama is just a specific here, that Rama could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be Ramakrishna, it could be Holy Mother. So, but just chant the name of the God. Just think of God all the time. Be in a constant companionship with the divine, and enjoy this life that way. Enjoy this life. You have the company of the divine who has done all of this, who plays with all of this. And as a companion, he gives you that wisdom, he gives you that understanding. It's yours to ask for. It's yours to know as you spend time with the Lord and contemplate these things when you don't understand. I find one of the best exercises for me when I'm just lost in the world, just lost by confusion and not knowing almost anything, actually. And you sit there, and the most comforting thing to do is just to know that you know almost nothing, and to just be quiet and sit with the Lord, and just share what the contents of your mind, the contents of your heart, the state of your being. And just that alone produces wisdom, and definitely gives the foundation for that wisdom to really shine, because that's where wisdom comes from. It comes from the silence of the self within. It rises up when nothing's holding it down, when the weight of thinking is not keeping the lid shut, as it were. The worship was over in the temples, and the bells rang for the food offerings in the shrine. As it was a summer noon, the sun was very hot. The flood tide began in the Ganges, and a breeze came up from the south. Sri Ramakrishna was resting in his room after his meal. The people of Basirat Rakal's birthplace, had been suffering from a severe drought during the summer months. Master to Manilal. Rakal says that the people in his native village have been suffering seriously from a scarcity of water. Why don't you build a reservoir there? That will do the people good. Smiling. You have so much money. What will you do with all of your wealth? But they say that the Tellus are very calculating. Everybody laughs. The Tellus is the oil man caste. So Thakur kind of did a little bit of a social faux pas and mentioned someone's caste out loud in public, and then linked to it one of the slights that's normally given to the caste, sort of the equivalent of telling a Polish joke or Polak joke way back when. Not the proper thing to do, but everybody laughs, So here he does this. He says, I hear that the Tellus are very calculating. Manilal was truly a calculating man, though he suffered no lack of money. In the latter years, he set up an endowment of 25,000 rupees for the maintenance of poor students. Manilal made no answer to these words of the master about his caste characteristics. Later on, in the course of the conversation, he remarked casually, Sir, you referred to a reservoir. You might as well have confined yourself to that suggestion. Why allude to the oil man caste and all of that? Some of the devotees smiled to themselves, and the master laughed. Presently, a few elderly members of the Brahmo Samaj arrived. The room was full of devotees. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on his bed facing the north. He kept smiling and talked to the Brahmo devotees in a joyous mood. Master, you talk glibly about prema, but is it such a commonplace thing? There are two characteristics of prema. First, it makes one forget the world. You see, so this divine love is just all-encompassing. Surely you've loved somebody in your life, and when you're around them, that they're all you think about, and when they're not around you, you think about them even more, wishing they were around you. And so it is in a relationship with the divine. That love will be so sweet as we draw near in our meditations and carry it through the day with us, that it becomes a remedy for troubles. It becomes your refuge, and the troubles of the world, they take their place as being insignificant, dreamlike, because they all change. They're all temporary. Everything is coming and going simultaneously. First, it makes one forget the world. So intense is one's love of God that one becomes unconscious of outer things. Chaitanya had this ecstatic love. He took wood for the sacred grove of Vrindavan and the ocean for the dark waters of the Jamuna. Second, one has no feeling of mineness toward the body, which is so dear to a man. One wholly gets rid of that feeling that the body is the soul. See, this is that withdrawal from me and mine, from the mind. When me and mine is withdrawn from the mind, everything lacks that sense of me or mine. And the body in particular, the body to not be yourself. And, again, I borrow on the dream world, because it's so odd in a dream that everything in that dream is equally you. Everything in that dream is equally conjured by your own mind as you sleep. And yet, for some magical, bizarre reason, our mind, our consciousness still selects only a particular in that dream to identify with, only one body or one character. And it's always the main character. It's always the center of the dream. And so we play out that role, but there's no reason for that. It's an odd thing, you see. And there's so much information available in thinking about that, because it's mirrored by, it tells you a lot about the nature of yourself, that you can identify with anybody, that you are everything and everyone. That's why the mind so easily falls asleep and takes on a new body in the dream, and so easily takes on a new body in the dream and forgets all of the memories of the sleeping body in the bed, forgets all about the life of the dreamer. and takes on a new existence in a new body, in a new circumstance, in the dream. And then when it wakes up, just as effortlessly and seamlessly, it identifies with the waking body, takes back all of the memories that it had forgotten during the night, and acts now in a new reality, still not aware that this too is dreamlike and temporary and passing. And so you see, it's your nature to be a part of anything and to take it on seamlessly as yourself, because everything is yourself and you are everything. And so to know, to see this answers a lot of questions. You know, in the waking state, we're like, well, gosh, if reincarnation is real, how come I can't remember all my past births? Seems like I'd be able to remember something. Well, when you go to sleep and take on the new dream body, you don't remember this birth. So it's trivial to forget your previous births. It seems to be just the way your mind chooses to work. When it identifies with a new thing, it completely forgets the old thing. It just is all about being, you know, because the mind that shows you that whatever activates this self belongs to the now. There's no memory, there's no projection. It's just is. And so if the mind is, if the self identifies with the dream body, then it just is. And if it identifies with the waking body, well, it just is. And just like that. So it's your nature. And this shows you that you are everything. You are comfortable with all attributes, and that you could change them in a whim, even at this moment, and carry on without even a blip in yourself, because you are universal by nature. When you think about these things and understand these things, you see that you're one of your fundamental characteristics is universality. You'll be anything, you know, and you'll be it completely in the moment. And so this is why these are spiritual instructions for knowing God, to be completely present in the moment, to remove the past and remove the future, remove the attributes, you know, and what's left is the self. What's left is you. And you're just as happy being this in this birth as you were all of the other things you've been in all of your other births, assuming, you know. And so it's just part and parcel of your nature to be utterly flexible, utterly new, and completely content with any set of attributes that come your way. One wholly gets rid of the feeling of the body and is the soul. There are certain signs of God realization. The man in whom longing for God manifests its glories is not far from attaining him. What are the glories of that longing? They are discrimination, dispassion, compassion for living beings, serving holy men, loving their company, chanting the names and the glories of God, telling the truth, and the like. When you see those signs of a longing in an aspirant, you can rightly say that for him, the vision of God is not far to seek. You know, it's very nearby. So what are those things? That discernment, right? What is discernment? Thakur says it's always constant. It should go on constantly in your mind. Discernment does not belong to your hour of practice. Discernment is a necessity all day long for a spiritual seeker. And what are you discerning? The real from the unreal, right? Thakur says anything that changes is unreal, and that unchanging alone is real. And so by discerning, you're constantly staying in the shrine. That's the only real place that we have. That's the only unchanging place, is that inner shrine where the divine absolute resides, where God in his unchanging absolute resides. And so it's there outside of mind. So that discerning, always noticing, okay, these things are all changing. This body is changing. You know, and so you use that to bring yourself back to center over and over and over again until you're established in that center. Dispassion means you're not being pulled out of your center, right? Dispassion means that you're able to sit there. You know who doesn't have dispassion is a dog hanging out the back window of a car. You know, if you put something up there, a nice big red ball, that dog will jump right out of that car and go, flipping down the freeway. It's like, don't be a dog in a window. That's not our relationship in the body, even though that's how most of the time we live. We inhabit this body like a dog in a window, just distracted by everything, every little bit of things that go by. We're just captured by all of it and pulled everywhere. Somebody's mean to you, and that changes a mood, and suddenly you're in a state of mind for the rest of the day because somebody said something. Dispassion is that buffer. It's the knowing that everything is divine. So whatever somebody says to you, it's just God talking to God. And there's nothing personal taken by the ego. So the ego feels no need to react. There's no need to cause a state of mind. So living in that dispassion is what gives us the constant remaining in the inner shrine, in the silent shrine within. Compassion for living beings will be the natural state of that, because the natural atmosphere of that inner shrine is love. And it's an inspiring love. And it is ultimately what moves you in the world. And so that love will move you toward compassion for all things, living or not. You'll be able to feel for everything. Serving holy men, yes, we'll leave it there. Loving their company. That's the big one. Loving the truth, loving the right, loving the good, loving the positive, and feeling and taking strength from that. Chanting the name and the glories of God, simply because God is always present with you and always inspiring, and you'll always be moved to the song, to praise, to joy, to goofiness, to playfulness in the sight of the beloved. Or you can become very inert, very quiet, very still, very indrawn. Or you can become like a lunatic, where you're just running around laughing at the absurdity of everything in the world, paying no attention to common rules of society interchange. You're your own man, eating with the dogs in the dirt pile, rolling around, forgetting to get dressed in the morning. I know. I laugh because I know a Swami Asitananda. He's passed away now, so I can tell all these terrible stories. But Swami Asitananda was in his last days. Some beautiful things happened to him, and it was such a comfort, because I always thought he was such a crotchety old monk. He was always so short and quite cantankerous at times. But in his last days, boy, did that evaporate. Some of the things are just so encouraging. I know I've told them before, but they're just inspiring. He used to, in his room, have a shrine to Mother on top of his dresser, and he would always go out into the vinca patch, which is this ground cover that grows in the forest in Olima there, and it produces these very beautiful little purple flowers. And he would always go out in that vinca patch and pick a bunch of purple flowers and take them in and offer them to the Mother on his shrine in his room. But toward the end of his life, he started offering them everywhere. So like you would find them, a pile of vinca flowers on the chair that Vimukta used to sit in to meet the guests as they came drove into the driveway. You would find them on the counter in the kitchen where the food was prepared. You'd find them out on the automotive work desk, where people did the work for the cars. And you would just find, just randomly, these little offering piles everywhere, because he was just starting to just see things like that, that the world was becoming divine for him. And that one morning, probably, anyway, I'll tell the story, but I know there's plenty of people that would think I shouldn't. But one day I drove into the Olima retreat, and as I came around that final corner in front of the men's retreat house, sure enough, there was Swami Asitananda standing knee deep in the vinca, picking the flowers, but he had no pants on. He was out there picking flowers with no pants on. So I pulled the car up and rolled the window down, and I was like, Maharaj, are you picking flowers from other? Yes, yes, I have to do my worship. I says, Maharaj, you probably should put pants on first. And he looked at me kind of puzzled, and then he looked down and he looked at me puzzled again. Oh, I suppose that is true. And then went back to picking flowers, and casually went back to the barn whenever he was finished. So, so this having your mind on God is delightful. It makes life completely unpredictable. It brings you sweetly into the present moment, recognizing it as love and wisdom. And it builds a great natural joy and enthusiasm within that spills out as compassion, as kindness, as sweetness, and occasionally as a teaching voice. Sometimes there can be anger there, but it's always an anger with no root. It's expressed and then it's done. And a lot of ego busting can happen then also. Those divine souls will see a point, will see a little prickle of your ego sticking up, and they'll just happily go over and just kind of flick it. And if you yourself are wise and discerning, you'll know that it was a teaching moment. It's like that woman who had a meeting with Swami Vivekananda, and she went to that meeting. I think it was that opera singer, and she was all finely dressed, and she wore this hat with these big, beautiful feathers coming off of it. And while she was sitting there talking with Swami Vivekananda, he stood up and he started walking around her. And as he walked around her, he would casually grab a feather and pluck it from her hat and throw it on the floor. And, which is probably close to one of the rudest things that you could do to somebody. And yet, when she wrote about it in her memoirs, she said, with every feather he plucked from my hat, I felt a section of my ego fall away. So he completely removed her ego as a famous singer coming to see him with all of that pomp, and he just
Hey, Swami, there's another story.
ah
I think it was in Ridgely Manor. It was somewhere. Anyway, um, it was a woman who was fairly new to coming to him, and he was smoking a cigar, and he blew the smoke directly in her face as she was standing there. And of course, every molecule of her body thought, how rude. But then she caught herself and said, am I going to let this little bit of smoke stand between me and what he's teaching me?
yes.
Do some pretty extreme things to people.
No, it's true, and it falls right in line with what we read last week, where that insight was given about the women who got embarrassed by his off-color joke and left the room. And he says, now, the weeds have been removed. You can talk. Now we can talk. So a lot of times those challenges like that from these divine souls are for exactly that. They're testing, what's important to you, how I treat you, what I have to offer you, what you want, what's important to you. And they'll find out by doing something simple like that. And you'll betray yourself. You'll betray what's important to yourself. And so this is the importance of constant practice, so that we're always aware of the contents of our mind and always able to pull the rein when we need to. So that discrimination, that dispassion, that compassion for living beings, serving holy men, loving their company, chanting the names and glories of God, telling the truth, and the like. This telling the truth one, I'm going to stick on that one for a second, because the master says that is the austerity of this age, truthfulness. And, we live in the age of image, where image is everything, and we present, it's like even companies they're not concerned about doing the right thing. They're concerned about looking like they're doing the right thing. And so they'll say anything in their ads and in their billboards and whatnot. And then you find out 10 years later all the stuff that they've actually been up to. You know, don't have an image of yourself that you project. Be yourself always. That's part of our practice. And being yourself doesn't mean conjuring up an idea of who or what you are, but having no idea, and in that unknowing, let yourself manifest, because there's no way to define yourself. You are anything and everything. You're free inside, and so you can manifest anything that's necessary or appropriate in the moment, and the divine does that best. Without you having to calculate it or think about it. So this truthfulness, it's the root behind the practice of confession in the Christian tradition. It's in the Christian tradition. It's very important to speak about your faults. To be open about the things that of your weaknesses. Lest the ego should take advantage and cover them, and present itself as more than what it is, which is what the ego is always doing, because the ego has no existence. And so anything that it presents is a lie, which is why we made a point of saying that anything that you are as an ego-based self, from the divine perspective, is ugly. There is no beauty in the ego. The ego is all about self and selfishness and self-preservation and separateness. And so we're very gentle to ourselves in our ego state. We're very kind to our egos, and really our ego is the sole thing responsible for our suffering. It's the sole thing responsible for us not being able to see God at this very moment. It's the thing that makes us look around and see objects and not divinity. And so the ego diminishes in the face of truth. Ego diminishes in the face of truth. And so always be honest about yourself. Never try and present yourself above your star, as it were. Welcome, Dominic. When you see those signs of a longing, when you see those signs of longing in an aspirant, you can rightly say that for him, the vision of God is not far to seek. The secret in this is that the vision of God is never far to seek. It is always, always as close as your neck. But it's the work that you may not be willing to do, the things that you may not be willing to let go of in yourself, that are the long labor that's necessary for your realization. It's not that realization's far from you. It's in you already. It cohabitates your body with you. That realized self is in there. But he's silent, she's silent and quiet. She has no need. She's waiting patiently, and has been waiting patiently for eons, for you to recognize that as yourself, instead of this changing idea in the mind. The state of a servant's house will tell you unmistakably whether his master has decided to visit it. First, the rubbish and jungle around the house are cleared up. So if the master is recently visited, the house looks great, right? In my case, if I was going to have a dinner party, the house looked great. It had all been cleaned up. So your life is cleaned up if the master is present in you. Your house is orderly. Your mind is orderly. Things are in good order around you. So the state of the servant's house. Whether his master has decided to visit, first, the rubbish and jungle around the house are cleared up. Second, the soot and dirt are removed from the rooms. Yes, all of that evil thinking, selfish thinking, worldly thinking has been swept up and put in the trash and given the exunt from the mind. Third, the courtyard, the floors, and other places are all swept clean, right? So you've taken away all of your tempting things. You've put up holy pictures in the house, You've got your food ready to go for the guests that might show up. You've got the Lord's offering ready should he knock on the door. And finally, the master himself sends various things to the house, such as a carpet, a hubble bubble for smoking, and the like. So you're well taken care of. You know, the master is sending blessings your way on a regular basis. You conclude that the master will very soon come. You know, indeed, when that's the experience, when the mind is being cleaned up, you're using that discernment and that discrimination and that dispassion appropriately. You're chanting the names and the glories of the divine. You're touching that bliss within. Compassion has woken up in you. You've moved into the moment and have kind of left past and future off to the side. Then you can know any moment that light switch is going to click and you're going to see what has always been. The devotee: Sir, should one first practice discrimination to attain self-control? Master: Well, that also is a path. It is called the path of vichara, reasoning. But the inner organs, he's got a thing, the inner organs are mind, intelligence, mind stuff, and ego. Manas, buddhi, chitta, and ahamkara. So these are those inner organs. They are brought under control naturally through the path of devotion as well. So you see, you can go take care of these things through efforts to take care of all these different things. But the reason that Thakur really speaks so fondly of bhakti and to the bhaktas is because bhakti does this for you, because it cleans up your mind by putting it on God, on love. It cleans up your actions by making them come from inspiration from the love of God. So the courtyard gets swept, the carpet gets cleaned, the jungle gets hacked back, all of that through love. So as a bhakta, the only thing you have to do is nurture that love for God and expand it, see it everywhere, not just in the particulars, and practice seeing it everywhere. Start talking to people by first recognizing that it is God in them that you are addressing. And it will naturally change the way you act toward people. It will naturally make you unselfish. It will naturally make you compassionate. Because being in the company of the beloved, you become like the beloved. You become what you are. He says it is rather easily accomplished that way. Sense pleasures appear more and more tasteless as love for God grows. Can carnal pleasure attract a grief-stricken man and woman the day that their child has died? You see, so you can see the nature of the pleasures that we get from the body, that they're not always the same, and they're not reliable, because some days they're proper and some days they're not. Sometimes they're desired, some days they're not. Repeated frequently, they become enslaving and you can't escape. And even when you don't want them, you are subject to them. Even when you're not wanting to be in a state of lust, lust will command you if you have not focused the mind on God, if you've not brought the mind toward the beloved. So the devotee asks, well, how can I develop love for God? Now, it's funny because we ask this question all the time, and the question's continually answered. Repeat the name of God, sing the names and glories of the divine. That will create devotion in you. The master again tells the devotee, repeat his name, and the sins will disappear. Thus you will destroy lust, you'll destroy anger, you'll destroy the desire for creature comforts, and so on. So this chanting of the name of God is central and should be going on in your mind all the time. The master tells the story of that woman that works in the mill. She's sitting there nursing her child, selling some flour to the customer, And at the same time, her hand is taking out the crushed rice from the hole and adding the new rice to be crushed on the next round, all at the same time. So he says, with keep 1/16 of your mind on God always. Always keep that process happening, that companionship happening in the back of your mind, and everything else will take care of itself. Goodness gracious, you don't have to worry about denying your lusts and denying your bad habits and worrying about your samskaras and your karmas and this, that, and the other. That all becomes God's problem at that point. Place yourself in the presence and let the mother take care of it. When you see something that's bothersome or that's not proper in you, just glance sweetly at the mother and say, I've got another one for you, Ma, and hand it over. Don't become stressed out, by your shortcomings. Leave them at the feet of the divine. Don't feel like you have to pick them up and take them with you when you go out of the shrine. Leave them there always. So repeat his name and your sin will disappear. Thus you will destroy lust, anger, and the desire for creature comforts and so on. Devotee, how can I take delight in God's name? Isn't that true? It's like for us to sit and think about, more japam? I already did mine today. Yeah. So how do we delight in these things? I'm going to find out what he says, and then I'll share the stuff in my mind. See, pray to God with a yearning heart that you may take delight in his name. He will certainly fulfill your heart's desire. So you see, even in that, lay it at the feet of the divine. You just go on being in the presence. All this stuff that has to be done, all the things that have to be accomplished, you don't have to do them. You have to set them at the feet of the Lord and keep your mind on the beloved, on the divine. And that will take care of everything. On the light side, I treat God like a friend. I do things with the divine that I do with my friends, if I had one. Just sit and tell your jokes and tell your stories and give that sideways glance every now and then, and share your frustrations. Just carry on, like you're hanging out with your best friend. That's because the divine will become at least that, and then surpass that times a million. He will certainly fulfill your heart's desire. So saying, the master sang a song in his sweet voice, pleading with the Divine Mother to show her grace to suffering men and women. O Mother, I have no one else to blame. Alas, I sink in the well these very hands have dug. Right? Our troubles are our troubles because we've created them. We are not victims in this world. We are that divine. So anything that we suffer comes from our own hands, comes out of our own karmas. This moment and every moment is the fulfillment of all your desires. Every decision you've made in life has brought you to this moment. And so if there's something wrong with this moment, then consider your actions, consider your choices, and make different ones, for the future. You're creating your tomorrow in this moment. That's a wonderful thing to say for a teaching thing, but forget it immediately, because we want to stay fully present. You don't want to be thinking about tomorrow, even in your acts of karma. You just want to be free, and freedom lies squarely in the moment. Alas, I sink in the well that these very hands have dug. With the 6 passions for my spade, I dug a pit in the sacred land of earth, and now the dark water of death gushes forth. How can I save myself, O Redeemer? Surely I have been my own enemy. How can I now ward off this dark water of death? Behold, the waters rise to my chest. How can I save myself? O Mother, save me. Yeah, you are my only refuge, and your protecting glance takes me across to the other shore of the world. So you see, he answers there his own question actually. How can I save myself? Oh, mother, save me. You are my only refuge. That's the first ingredient. Make sure that in your life, God is your only refuge. Don't go to the distractions of the world that we're accustomed to going to when we're stressed out, when we're worn out, when we're sad, when we're broken, when we're hurt. Don't go to the refuges of the world, because the refuges of the world can only distract. They can't fix, they can't heal, they can't integrate, they can't do anything but distract. But the refuge of the divine, that is your nature deep within yourself, that is native to you, natural to you, and always present for you. And it doesn't distract, it heals, it integrates, it brings to oneness all of these things that are sticking out and causing trouble. The master is saying again, what a delirious fever is this that I suffer from. O mother, your grace is my only cure. So we constantly live in that grace. We constantly cover all of our shortcomings, all of our mistakes, all of the things that are just out of hand in our life. We cover them by grace. And that's where we find the strength to sit in the presence of God, even as we know our sin, even as we know our conditions, even as we know our circumstances. Grace is the only cure, right? False pride is the fever that racks my wasted form, right? False pride is taking a pride in your personality, taking a pride in your body, taking a pride in your accomplishments. All these things that change and disappear and actually don't even exist anywhere but in your own mind. You know, don't build your house on the sand. All of the things that come out of the changing world are the sand, and a house built on sand cannot stand, cannot last. You know, will not see you to yourself, to your redemption, your salvation, your realization. I'll use all the words, but you know, false pride is the fever that racks my wasted form. I and mine are my cry. Oh, what a wicked delusion. My quenchless thirst for wealth and friends is never ceasing. There it is, right there, a fundamental truth. Your desires will never be fulfilled. They only give birth to more. You know, no matter what it is, I can say this from an unfortunate life of trying, of trying to live, to fulfill desires. And desires simply multiply and eventually enslave you because they become habitual. They no longer become a matter of inspiration or want within you. They become a matter of need and have to, because you're subject to a cruel habit now. You know, if you go after lust, you soon will not be able to escape it. You will not be able to have a moment of your day where lust is not somewhere present, waiting. You're always looking, always watching, always hunting, you know, for that fulfillment. And so the desires are like that. They simply will increase until they take all of your mind and all of your time. And so discipline yourself, you know this to be the nature of them, and discipline yourself, renounce them, discern first, see what they do to you, see that it is true what I'm saying, what the scriptures are saying. Find that out. And then once you find that out, don't forget, because the mind will constantly try to erase that memory and constantly just be playing back the pleasant parts. It won't play back the bad parts. It'll only play back the pleasant parts and trick you into falling again. And when you fall that time, then you'll remember the bad part, because it will be right there with you again. You're like, oh my God, why did I do this? You know? My quenchless thirst for wealth and friends is never ceasing. How then shall I sustain my life? I talk about things unreal. So what do you talk about? Do we talk about the things of the changing all the time? This is my wretched delirium, that we find all of these things of the change worthy of talk, when the talk doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. The moment still comes and goes as it always came and go, but we were concerned about the mundane. We weren't being established in the changeless. We weren't secure in the refuge, the silence within. We weren't strong in the wisdom and the discernment that fill the atmosphere of the inner shrine. You see? And I indulge in it always, O giver of all good fortune. My eyes in seeming sleep are closed. My stomach is filled with the vile worms of cruelty. This wonderful, my eyes in seeming sleep. That means our ignorance that we blame for so much. It's not a sleeping, it's a seeming sleep. We're ignoring things so that we can remain ignorant. And we have to go through discernment to find that out. You know, that was a staggering thing for me to have to accept when it occurred to me that my being depressed somehow served me, that I was holding on to it and not letting it go, because it gave me a sense of depth in life. It gave me a sense of you know, meaning. As crazy as that sounds. But to realize that the reason that you're not overcoming things is because you won't let go of them. Not because you're a victim, but you haven't yet discerned and you haven't yet put faith in the discernment in order to give birth to a renunciation, right? And so keep your eyes on God. 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 Sing that name, sing those glories continuously, so that this is not the case. This is how we wake up. Alas, I wander about, absorbed in unmeaning deeds, thinking about the mundane day to day. Even for your holy name, I have no taste, O Mother. I doubt that I shall be ever cured of this malady. You see, that is the final result of egoism, is a loss of faith, the loss of faith in yourself, the loss of faith in the meaningfulness of life, a loss of faith in the depth of love and the existence of love, a loss of faith in the divine. And it's just, you've finally given in to your experience, which is of the mundane, of the constant change. You've surrendered to that, and now your world is filled with the mundane change, and you think that to be the only reality, and you're left then alone and vacant. It's a very sorrowful state of being when you take any of these things that the world runs after to its nth degree. This is what is at the end of it. This is what awaits, the lovers of desire. All right. Then the master said, even for your holy name, I have no taste. A typhoid patient has very little chance of recovery if he loses all taste for food. But his life need not be despised if he enjoys food even a little. That is why one should cultivate a taste for God's name. Any name will do. Durga, Krishna, Shiva. Then, if through the chanting of the name one's attachment to God grows day by day, and joy fills the soul, one has nothing to fear. The delirium will certainly disappear. The grace of God will certainly descend. This is the promise, and this is where we're going to stop, because this is beautiful. As is everything, but this is the promise right here. This is the promise of spiritual life. He's like, call on that name of God. Any name will do. Any name will do. Call on the name of God. Sing the name of God. Remember the presence. Celebrate the presence. Be in the presence. Be inspired in it. Allow yourself to be 100% in it through your belief in grace, through your belief in the love and perfection of God. not your own. Give up your own attempts at perfection and understand that you can do nothing but chant the name of God. And then what will happen? He says, one's attachment to God will grow day by day. Joy will fill the soul. One has nothing to fear. The delirium will certainly disappear. The grace of God will certainly descend. So this is everything that you need to know in one sentence. So we won't need to have any more classes. We'll just chant the name of God together over and over and over again.